game. Way too much work. We should work better. Do you know that Gopher? Just Gopher. This is why I came to America.
Welcome to another episode of Mattyice and the Chief. Patrick, we're back.
Finally.
Oh, yeah, a little bit of both of us not being available at times, but both of us could record. That's why
I say both of us. That's pretty generous.
Well, it was you. I was going to be nice. I wasn't going to say anything.
It was mainly me.
It was very much you, but that's okay. One or two of the nights we wanted to be able to do it, I probably couldn't have done it anyways, so it worked out fine. Anyways, we saved the best for last, and Patrick, we're going to start with an is back, and I didn't tell you we were, because I guarantee you we both have the same is back, because Patrick, it is officially college football week. We have football this week. We have actual, real, meaningful football games. And not to give too much of a spoiler, Patrick.
That's the game of the week.
Game of the week is absolutely University of Hawaii. So if you're not watching the show, first off, you should be, because then you get to watch me and Patrick actually say things instead of just hearing us. But if you're not watching us, we're live on Facebook currently. Tomorrow morning when Matt can get around to it, or tomorrow afternoon, depending on if a baby lets it happen, we will be on YouTube. So what do? You follow us on Twitter at MIATC Show. Same thing on Instagram. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, obviously, Mattyice and the Chief. And you'll be good to go there. You'll figure out, you'll be able to find out where we're at. Obviously, if you're following us on SoundCloud, iTunes, whatever, if you're subscribed there, you will get the podcast version immediately when it goes up, which will go up about 15, 20 minutes after we finish recording this. So if you want it the earliest, you got to watch on Facebook. That's the best way to do it. If not, if you watch later, you can either watch it again on Facebook, it's still there, or you can watch it on the YouTube channel, Mattyice and the Chief. We've got some old ones that will be up. Everything that we've ever video recorded will be on that YouTube page eventually. So if you want to go back and laugh at some of the weird takes that we have had over the years, that would be a good spot to do it. If you want to see me and Patrick grow up in front of your eyes, that is another good place to do it. Of course, our individual Twitters are at MIATC or at Matt_Sindler and at Patrick_Howie. Now, Patrick, why don't you tell the folks real quick what they need to do within the next 24 hours regarding a little certain thing that we do every year that my wife somehow wins. Not somehow, she knows football.
She knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she does.
So what, Matt? I'm currently sharing the Facebook Live.
Smart.
So I'm trying to get people to watch. But in regards to what Matt's referring to, so we do the yearly college football pick, and we always do an NFL one as well. But I wouldn't say for obvious reasons, but college football pick usually gets more people in than the NFL, which I'll create an NFL one probably go ahead and create it tomorrow.
It's coming soon.
It's coming soon. I'm not going to blast it tomorrow, but I'll go ahead and make it tomorrow. College football pick on ESPN. That one's live. Made it a few days ago. I'll blast it again tomorrow after I blast the show, obviously. Free on ESPN, no password or anything. Let me see. For those of you who are listening, I need to figure out really quickly what it is that you need to search. I've got ESPN right in front of my face.
I remember right. I'm working on pulling it up right now. I'm pretty sure it is Mattyice and the Chief, the full word, which we don't always do, but we did for this time. And then I think it's 2022. If it'll
that sounds pretty accurate. I had to log out of a different account and log into mine. I was hired on. I say hired on. I was asked to do some consulting for a fantasy football draft. And by that, I mean I was asked to do their draft for them. So I was in someone else's
Okay.
account.
I'm there, Patrick. It is Mattyice and the Chief 2022.
That's exactly what it is. So you just go in. The link will be on Facebook. It'll be on Twitter. Instagram links aren't really work that well. But I may be able to do it on my Instagram stories or something. But it'll be on all those. Just follow the link, join in every week, make your picks. So they're confidence picks. I think we're in agreement. It makes this whole thing more fun.
Yeah.
So instead of just picking straight up who you think is going to win, obviously you choose if it's, for example, if you think Hawaii is going to destroy Vanderbilt, no doubt about it. Put that one out of 10 because if you win, that's 10 points. Oregon, like for example, week 1, it's Oregon, Georgia. If you think Georgia's going to destroy, put that one at 10. Houston, UTSA. If you're not so sure, put that one 1, 2, 3. So that way, if you get it right, then you get those. But if you don't, well, you only lost 1, 2 points. It's no big deal.
Well, and what's important about this is it makes it a lot easier with tiebreakers. Tiebreakers don't really come into it because the tiebreaker each week is like how many points are going to get scored. I think this week it is how many points are scored in the Notre Dame Ohio State game. So that would come into play a lot more, and that's kind of just a crapshoot. So at least this way, like you're determining your point value a little bit more because again, my wife, I'm sure, is filling it out right now.
She's probably already done it.
What you need to, she might already be in, I'm not sure. What you need to do right now, though, pause this. Well, if it's live, you can't do this, but if you're watching live, you can't do this. But if you're listening, if you're watching, pause this right now, go over there, make your picks because we're at the very end of this episode going to quickly run through our picks for this week like we would a normal week. Next week, the show will get a little bit more into our normal football season-y groove. We'll just straight up talk college football. And we'll probably do a little bit of a pro preview at least because we haven't done any NFL because we've been busy doing college football. So do that right now. Pause it unless you're live. Pause it. Go do that. And we will come back and talk about that here in a bit. Now, Patrick, let's get into these picks. Let's get into these conference previews real fast. We're going to start with Sun Belt. That's our G5 school that we match up with the Sun Belt in Matt's weird NCAA Football 14 Pro Rel discussion. That's how I always do it. Sun Belt goes with SEC. Regional makes sense. So, Patrick, let me start with you. Who do you have winning the Sun Belt this year?
So, I mean, one of the sexier picks is going to be Coastal Carolina. They've been the hot team lately. Grayson McCall's still there. He's going to be one of the he's probably that second tier of quarterbacks, second to third tier as far as like this NFL draft's concerned, because he's finally eligible.
Feels like he's
been there for 5 years now, and he's finally eligible to be drafted. I think they're starting to lose too many weapons. I think you kind of saw them take a step down a little bit last year. I don't know if they're going to be able to get back to where they were when they were playing like BYU in that electric game.
Mullins versus Mormons, baby. I still need to get that shit.
That was great.
But
Coastal's just not built for a team that can just reload. I mean, they hopped onto the scene in like 2020. So, like, whenever you're coming in hot that late in the game, you don't really have the depth. So when one or two of those key pieces leaves, they can just slide in and be good. And Isaiah Likely was one of those guys who was one of the top college tight ends in the country, who's now with the Ravens. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to step in to that receiving core and just pick up where Likely left off. because there really isn't anyone like him. So I'm going to stick with, this is going to be a little vanilla, but I'm going to go with App State.
Okay.
This is a team that's consistently fighting for conference championships. They did it before they jumped into the Sun Belt. They did it immediately once they were here. Now that we have a conference title game, we were Sun Belt students back when there wasn't one. That game hasn't been played for very long, but this is a team that's consistently in the hunt for championships. You got a kid like Chase Bryce who's going to be able to just tear it up against Sun Belt defenses, which most of the time don't exist.
Yeah,
I do have a team to watch out for. I'm ready to talk about them. But as far as my prediction, I'm going to go with App State.
Well, go ahead and tell me who you think to watch out for.
I think the team to watch out for is a newcomer, and it's going to be Marshall. Newcomer, them along with a few other schools during the all mix. I call it a 10-year mix-up because it feels like every 10 years there's a shake-up in college conferences and divisions and whatnot. And the lesser appealing shake-up was all the schools that hopped over and joined the Sun Belt, and Marshall's one of those schools. I don't really think that the Sun Belt has enough powerhouse schools this year to where each game is enticing. There are some conferences where it's just loaded top to bottom, and then there's some where it's maybe two heavy favorites and the rest are they're just bad. And the Sun Belt, before these additions, was one of those conferences where, like, okay, you've got App State, you've got Coastal, you've got Georgia State, but then that's it. Well, now you've got another potential powerhouse. Granted, their quarterback is now in Virginia Tech, but I think Marshall can give this Sun Belt Conference a run for its money. They've got Texas Tech transfer Henry Colby coming in at quarterback. I know that they've got Rasheen Alley, who ran for 1,400 yards, had 23 touchdowns last year. That's absurd. I think they have the offense to really shake this thing up. And not only that, but they brought in several pieces from the transfer portal on offense. I think this is a team that is going to come in week one in a new conference and establish themselves as part of this top tier immediately.
So I'll go ahead and do my who to watch then first because we're not too far off. I went ahead and put for me, I have all four of the new conference teams in as my teams to watch because we don't know what they're going to do. So that's Old Dominion, Marshall, as you mentioned, Southern Mississippi, and James Madison. Because the thing with this is you're bringing teams in who have never played a lot of these teams. Look, James Madison is obviously a new to FBS team even. Yeah. Dominion hadn't been around that long. Southern Miss has kind of been hanging out at the bottom of conference.
Yeah.
So, but these are some of these teams. Southern Miss has been good at football at points. Marshall has been very good. Obviously, we all know them from especially the Randy Moss, Chad Pennington era. But Byron Leftwich. You start thinking there's some when you look at Marshall history. There's some names on those football teams. And there have been some very, very good players. So it'll be interesting to watch them come into the conference and see how quickly they adjust to the Sun Belt. Because, yes, I think there are teams like Marshall, and I would even go with Southern Miss coming from a conference that is probably better than the Sun Belt top to bottom. That, it's interesting to see how quickly those athletes translate into a new conference because new conferences are different and you're looking at opponents that you've not ever played before. So we'll see some teams lose to some of these new teams that maybe shouldn't lose to them because they've just never seen them before, and vice versa. We'll see the same thing happen with the other teams. So I'm really interested to see how those teams adjust to the new conference. For me, Patrick, I think I think it comes down to two teams. It comes down to App State that you mentioned and the team that I'm picking, and I'm picking Coastal Carolina to win this championship because I think, look, having Grayson McCall come back or still be there, not come back because he couldn't go yet.
Right.
He's going to be a huge thing.
He could have transferred if he wanted to.
Right. The thing I'm looking at this team as last year kind of being a sophomore slump, like having a great freshman year, coming in last year and still being very good, but kind of having that little bit of a tail off. And I think even though they only bring back 6 returning starters, I think this is going to be the year where you see maybe some of those freshmen that came in last year because they knew who Coastal Carolina was because of Mullets versus Mormon. When you bring in 2 recruiting classes after that, and you still got a guy like Grayson McCall, I think you're going to see a little bit more of a bounce back. And so I think it's going to come down to really the App State versus Coastal Carolina game. It's coming out of that division, which is the East Division, obviously. And so for me, I think Coastal Carolina edges them out. I think App State has to come to App State has to come to Conway, Carolina. So South Carolina. That's going to be a fun one. That's going to be the determining factor. And you look on the West side, there's just not many teams. I'm not stoked about the West side. Louisiana, obviously, they're replacing a new coach. Excuse me, ULA. I can't believe I just did that. That hurt a little bit. But then, you're South Alabama, I don't trust them. Troy, they've been so up and down the last couple of years.
They're more down than up lately.
Notice neither one of us are going homer and picking out Arkansas State.
Oh, no.
They might be the second worst team in this division, or they're definitely the second worst team in their division. I think they might be the third worst team in the entire conference, and that's including a team that came up from FCS last year, being maybe slightly below. This is just not a good – Arkansas State's just not a good football team this year. So go ahead, folks, if you are especially Razorback fans in the state of Arkansas and you want to make fun of us, this is the year to do it.
This is the year to do it.
And hopefully this year ends with Butch Jones being shown the door, because I don't think he is the answer. I never thought he was the answer. It should have been Ryan Applin from the beginning. I've said that. I said that last year. I'm saying that again this year. It should have been Ryan Applin. It should have been Ryan Applin. It should have been Ryan Applin. Sunbelt, that is it. Patrick's got App State. I've got Coastal Carolina. Let's go to the SEC. And Patrick, we'll start in the East. Once again, for those of you who have been around with us, you know the drill. If you haven't, if this is your first episode, if you're watching because you saw that we said SEC and it's on Facebook and you're like, whoa, SEC, I'm from Arkansas. We know a lot of people from Arkansas, so now you're watching. Well, guess what? You're going to have to wait a little bit because we almost always start in the East and move west like the great country of the United States did. We're manifest destinying all the time. So we'll start in the East. We'll go alphabetically. We'll talk about the teams, all of them, and then we'll, at the end of this, go through, give the records real fast, and tell you where they end up and see how similar we are. Usually we end up being fairly similar. So, Patrick, that means we're going to start in the East. We're starting with Florida. Finished 6-7 last year, so another bad year for Florida, which, look, they're not too far off of winning a championship. Or being the championship representative, I should say. But this is, I guess that was last year, 1 year ago, not last football season, but the year before that. Billy Napier coming over from ULA is the guy here. The question for me is going to be how quickly can he fix some of the problems they have. The entire D-line, that's my player to watch for the Florida Gators because their D-line was not great last year. They were awful against the run. They couldn't get to the quarterback. So that's a massive problem. How quickly can Coach Napier fix that is going to be one of the big – because that's one of the things that Florida's been great at for years and years and years. And, oh, by the way, the two best other best teams in the division are very, very good at running the football. So if you can't do that, you're not going to get to the top of this division. They've got a bunch of tough matchups early. So bringing in with quarterback Anthony Richardson, that's going to be interesting. He's going to have to really hit the ground really, really quickly and get going. He was very good last year towards the end of the season, I guess in 8 games that he played, averaging 8.1 yards per play, ran for 401 yards. So he can do some things, but they're going to have to be able to stop the run. I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that. So this could be another iffy year for Florida.
Well, I mean, problem is he doesn't really have a lot to work with. Like,
right.
He has 2 returning receivers, which one of them topped 500 yards receiving, total of really towards returning touchdowns, like 7 returning touchdowns. They didn't really have a lot to work with on offense to begin with. This defense is really sketchy. I mean, a lot of these pieces on defense are gone, and it wasn't a great defense like you mentioned to begin with.
Right.
So you have a lot of holes to fill on an already pretty rough defense. Year one's going to look pretty bad, in my opinion. Like, I mean, one of my things to do is immediately just go to the schedule. What are they working with? Utah, Kentucky, that's 2 losses back-to-back. Central Florida, Tennessee. I mean, for one, everyone in the SEC has a rough schedule because the entire SEC is rough from top to bottom. We all know that. They do get to play Missouri. They do play schools like South Florida, Eastern Washington. They play Vanderbilt, Florida State always, of course, which they're starting to improve a little bit. I don't know. You think by this point Florida's probably going to have it figured out by the time we get to the end of November. I don't see much improvement from what we had. I mean, it's not the hardest SEC schedule in the universe, but again, this year you just gotta give Napier some time. Gotta let him go out and get his guys, recruit, establish his culture. Don't anticipate much of anything in year one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a very logical way to look at it for Florida. Next up, Patrick, we got Georgia. For me, look, this is the clear favorite, right? Like, there is a tier 1 in the SEC. We know who they are for right now. Georgia is obviously still in the place that they started at or that they finished at last year. They do have to replace a lot. They only bring back 10 starters, but it's also Georgia, and so you assume that they're the pieces that they have to replace, the areas they have to replace. They've been very good at filling those spots to begin with. The question for me with this team this year is going to be, how far can Stetson Bennett take them? Because I know he played good at times last year, but I still think he has a little bit of that. He's not enough of a difference maker for me.
There's a reason why he came back.
Right. Right. And you look at, he didn't throw for 3,000 yards last year, finished with 29 touchdowns. It was a fine season. Don't get me wrong. But if they really want to, especially with having replaced so many people, obviously they got to replace a lot on that defense because like half the defense went in the first round last year in the draft. Like if they want to replace that team, if they want to be good, they're going to maybe need a little bit more help from a quarterback than they needed last year. I think maybe the strength of this team doesn't shift completely, but it shifts a little bit. Like if we're, you're talking balance, scales of balance, like defense had it way better, weighed it down, which is a good thing here. That's a weird way to look at it. But, the defense did so much. And I think it's going to even out a little bit, get a little bit closer. There's still going to be – defense is still the strength of this team, and it will be the strength of this team as long as Georgia is Georgia. But I think, if they can have a superstar level quarterback, if they can have an above average quarterback, if they can have a, top 5 sort of NFL draft type of quarterback, this team can be maybe unstoppable. And I just don't know if Stetson Bennett is that yet.
Well, here's the problem. If he's not that yet, he's not going to be that person because he's, probably one of them, not the oldest starting quarterback in the SEC. Like he could have easily went into the draft last year. Probably saw that he wasn't going to get drafted. Realized why go through that grind to potentially make a team, potentially make a practice squad, or make more money coming back to Georgia, spend another year in college, go through the exact same grind that I would have to do next year, and then have some fun and potentially compete for another championship. So, I mean, in my head, once he announced he was coming back, I'm like, yeah, I would too. Because if you don't, you're not going to play football next fall.
Did you want to
come back?
Just to give a real weird, quick aside, Stetson Bennett walked on at Georgia his freshman year, didn't play a snap. Justin Fields then committed to play at Georgia in 2018, so Bennett decided to transfer to a community or to a junior college. He plays at a junior college, and then he goes. He was about to join. I'll say this: he was about to join the ULA Raging Cajun, and then decided to go to Georgia. He ends up at Georgia. They needed a backup quarterback because Fields has just transferred to Ohio State, so it's now Bennett. Bennett is Jake Fromm's backup, which is another weird name. So then, so it gets that. Then Fromm gets hurt. He has to go in, yada, yada. Next year, the next season, you're looking at him being the backup to DeJuan Mathis. There's your name. He's the starter after Jamie Newman decided to opt out of the season, who ended up, I believe, at Wake Forest, right? After that.
No.
He skipped the year entirely, right? And then didn't get drafted.
Newman was at Wake Forest, transferred to Georgia.
That's what it was.
And then that's when COVID happened, and then he just sat out 2020, which everyone was like, you are not the type of person that needs to be sitting out 2020. Like,
yeah. Then
there were guys like Jamar Chase who were sitting out, and like, that's perfectly fine. Jamie Newman didn't have nearly enough on tape to sit out and like, oh, you're good.
Yeah, and then JT Daniels ends up taking over the job. Then Bennett starts the season last year as the backup to JT Daniels. Then JT Daniels gets hurt. Then he gets to Stetson Bennett. Bennett's there for the rest of the year. They end up, going to winning the national title. So, long story short, he's had a weird career so far, and I think it's up to him to see how high this Georgia team can fly, to quote Michael Scott. Next up, Patrick, we got Kentucky. Again, another team where defense is going to be the main side of the most important side of the football. And then, look, they've got to fill some holes, and that is typical of all these SEC teams, especially on the offensive line. They got to fill some holes. They got to fill some on the defense, fill some on the offensive line. So I think for me, this is another case of what is the quarterback going to do? Will Levis looked a lot better last year than I think either one of us thought he was going to. So if they can keep the offense moving in the direction that they were moving last year, I think this defense is going to be fine. You look at running back. My guy to watch for them is going to be Chris Rodriguez Jr. See if he stays healthy. If they can run the football with him, this is going to be a team that's built on stopping teams and running the ball a little bit. But Will Levis gives them a better option to pass the football, and that makes them a little bit more dangerous. I think this is a very underrated team nationally. I think the SEC, their fellow teams in the SEC know what they're looking at with Kentucky, and they know this is a very good football team. But I think nationally, they're a little underrated.
Yeah, I think nationally so, and then but I also think the problem with a school like Kentucky is they'll fly through maybe 6-7 games in their schedule, and then they might have lost one game, might be undefeated at that point, and then we're talking about them as like the next up and coming team. Can they beat one of these power schools? And then they play usually Georgia, and then Georgia just puts the biggest beat down on them. And then we're like, oh, so this is what happens when they play a top 10 team, or this is what happens when they go up someone that should be to their skill set. So it's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't hype them up as much, because it's kind of what happens every year. So, like,
let me talk you off a ledge.
They're going to get an early test with Florida, but outside of that, I think they can roll through the first month. And then the problem is, I don't know what's going to happen when they go to Ole Miss.
Well,
first week of October.
that's a crapshoot. So I think, look, I think for me, you look at that schedule, it's very winnable early. Miami of Ohio, Florida, who I think is a very winnable game. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to say it's an easily winnable game, but I feel I know where I would put it in my confidence base.
I'm confident, yeah.
Then you got Youngstown State, Northern Illinois, who's a tough team, but I think they can handle for sure. Ole Miss, who, look, we'll talk about them here in a little bit, but it is a little bit, to me, a bit of a crapshoot, especially that early in the year. That's still fairly early in the season. South Carolina, and then Mississippi State's your other crossover team, like your other divisional crossover team. So they don't really play, to me, a tough game until Tennessee. Is the first game I look at on their schedule that I'm really worried about. That's not till week 9. Then they get essentially get 2 weeks off because they play Missouri and Vanderbilt before they have to play Georgia. And then they play Louisville. So you look at the schedule, and it's a very, very favorable schedule. And I think my picks will reflect that here in a bit. Let's move on, Patrick, to Missouri. We can talk about Kentucky maybe a little bit more when we make our final picks.
Yeah.
For me, Missouri, this is another case. We say it all the time. If you've got 3 quarterbacks, Patrick, you have 0 quarterbacks. I don't think they know who their quarterback – I mean, they probably know who their quarterback is, but we don't know who their quarterback is enough to really talk about who their quarterback's going to be. But if there's a competition between 3 quarterbacks, you're not looking good. The offense wasn't great last year. They got to replace what's his name? That running back. Who am I thinking of? Tyler Batty. Replace Tyler Batty. So you got to replace your best running back. You might have a decent offensive line and wide receiver core. Defense improved at the end of the season last year, but they've got to rely on a bunch of transfers to kind of take the next step. So for me, again, the main question for me comes down to, again, who is the quarterback? And then after that, is the defense going to be able to keep up the improvement that we saw from them at the end of last season? Because they only averaged 22.6 points a game, and that was sort of having a quarterback and a very, very good running back. Without that, I'm not sure they have anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's just too many holes on this team, too many question marks that just have yet to go unanswered. And I don't want to say our boys on the hot seat, but because it's Missouri, but at the same time, like, what have you done? I feel like you just taking a few steps back every year versus whenever Drinkwitz got there. Like, there's not been any improvement. If anything, there's been degression since he's gotten there.
Yeah, for me, that's kind of the problem, is that I don't necessarily think that, I think, I don't want to say he's out of his element, but he's a little bit out of his element here.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously he was successful at App State when he was there. That's kind of a program that you can coast a little bit, though. I'm not saying that's what he did, but there are certain schools that are established, whether it's the SEC, whether it's, I don't know, a school like Ohio State, whether it is App State. I think there are certain schools that the brand has been established for a while, and you can, as long as you can control a little bit of it, you can coast. And I don't know if that's what happened. He just kind of coasted through App State, and that presented him the opportunity to go to Missouri. And then obviously you can't do that at Missouri. You can't do that in the SEC. Like,
what I think
your job isn't to rebuild App State, because App State was in a pretty solid spot when you got there. Your job is to rebuild, and he's really never been in a position where he's had to build anything. Well,
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Is I think that what we saw from him, he took control of a racehorse that was already 3/4 of the way around the track and in the lead at App State. And you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to do a lot of necessarily recruiting to stay on top of the Sun Belt, because you're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Sun Belt consistently. And so, you're just going to get that talent. Not that you don't have to work a little bit, but when teams like Arkansas State are in your conference, Patrick, you don't have to.
You don't have to work too hard.
when you're coaching against Butch Jones, granted he wasn't there when Butch Jones was there, but when you're coaching against a bunch of Butch Joneses, you know, it's a little bit easier
You're
to
not
be
really putting in a sweat
right.
in order to win Sun Belt.
When you come into a conference and you're already at the bottom, there's a lot that has to be done. And if you're not just a top tier guy who's good at rebuilding rosters, and really if you're not a guy who can get a quarterback, that's most of how you get a bad team successful very, very quickly is to get a quarterback above your status. So you got to get, I'm not going to use stars, but you've got to get a top level quarterback who comes in, can run your offense, and it is very, very good, that plays better than the rest of your team essentially and drags your team along kicking and screaming, and then maybe be good at defense as well to get you to, you know, X more amount of wins. And then once you do that, you know, people start coming in. He's not had that in Missouri. Missouri's not been great at really. They've been very mediocre at getting quarterbacks for a very, very long time. I would call them up until this last year. I would call them the John Elway of colleges in terms of they just never find a quarterback. You know, you can point to a guy like maybe Drew Lock being a good quarterback, but he wasn't elite enough to drag a team along kicking and screaming, and I think they're going to be in the same place. So for me, you know, you look at the division around them, and other teams are getting better at a quicker pace. One of those teams who might be getting better at a quicker pace, Patrick, is South Carolina. Finished 7-6 last year, much better than we thought they would. They're bringing in a lot of transfers, including Spencer Rattler, obviously from OU. So for a team that was already improving quickly, this is a team that with Shane Beamer is improving maybe a little bit quicker, obviously bringing over Corey Rucker from Arkansas State. So shout out there. The one good guy that Arkansas State might have had jump ship, went up to the SEC. The offensive line brings back 5 guys. They weren't great last year, though. They're pretty bad. And so to me, what is going to be the player to watch is going to be Spencer Rattler, because he's not got the offensive line that he had at OU. He's not got the receiving core that he had at OU. He's not got the we're better than everybody in the conference that he had at OU. And he wasn't great there. So for me, can he be good at South Carolina in a new conference, being obviously the SEC, and not having all those things? They've got a very tough crossover schedule. You look at some of the teams that they have to play in the other division. You throw in the fact that they also have to play Clemson at the end of the year. I think this will be a team that will probably be better on paper, be better on the field, on tape, than they actually will be on paper. Because I think on paper, you're going to look at it back at the end of the year and be like, oh, this was a very mediocre football team. But I think they're going to be in a lot more games than maybe they should be. They're going to lose some games, but they'll be in them a little bit. They'll be better games than they would have been last year. So if you're a Gamecock fan, which, by the way, I saw a poll where they're trying to name their their live mascot. And did you see this, Patrick?
Oh, I've seen it.
Okay. I'm just going to mention this here. The fact that I get why the one that was voted at the top was voted at the top. A bunch of college kids voting on a rooster's name. I get why it ended up being what they did. But the fact that Marco Pollo is so low on that list at only 2% is a crime against humanity. That is such an incredible name for a live that I am. This is further proof to me, Patrick, that South Carolina has no business being a top-level SEC team. If you can't see how good that pun is and you just go with the cheap humor, I expect better from you is all I'm going to say.
I mean, I kind of like Captain Cluck.
I also really like Coop because of a chicken coop. I think that's a really
I like
fun.
Coop. But, I mean, when you see the clear option, that's winning by almost 80%.
I mean, it's no shock.
It's not shock at all. I mean, it's low-hanging fruit, but
yeah,
it's too low not to grab.
What do you think of this team, though?
I mean, you kind of know they're going to be really improved. But they were 6-2 6-7 last year.
They were 7-6.
Yeah, 7-6 after their Mayo Bowl win. And they've got the pieces in place to definitely be improved. The thing is with my prediction for how the year's going to go, if you include a bowl win, it's technically better. But you mentioned they're going to be in a lot more games. So, like, maybe they can hold on with Georgia throughout the first half. They can make that Kentucky game up until the fourth quarter. They can make it interesting early against Arkansas in Fayetteville. They can probably take that Clemson game farther than they've really ever done in quite a while. So, I mean, I see a few losses on their schedule, but that doesn't mean those 2 or 3 of those aren't, one-score games.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they're going to be in – I think they're going to be in almost every single game that they play. Georgia's probably going to be the one example where they may not be in that one, but for one half, they could probably keep it interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is gonna – you're going to look at the end of the year, they're like, oh, they finished 8-4, 7-5. That's not much better. But if you watch them throughout the entire year, you're going to realize they're drastically improved from last season. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting team to watch for sure.
Yeah, they might be the team that I'm the most unsure of how their season's going to go. And I think that'll be reflected in the fact that I picked them to go 6-6. Like we'll talk about standings later, but I picked them to go 6-6. So essentially the same. They go to a bowl game, win the bowl game, 7-6. I think they'll be the same. But again, I think they'll be a better actual team than that record shows. Patrick, let's go now to Tennessee, another team that people that might kind of be a sneaky, sexy pick for a lot of people. Look, Josh Heupel came in last year. Their offense took off out of the gate like a Ferrari, except for their offensive line, who was a little bit more like a Kia. Like, they allowed 44 sacks last year. So you got a high-powered offense and then a little terrible. Well, I guess Kias are a little bit better made than they used to be. They may not have the same. They're not like a Hyundai or something. So maybe I used the wrong car there. Doesn't matter. Their offensive line wasn't good last year. They've got to improve that a lot to take the next step. And look, they averaged 39.3 points a game. They finished 7-6. So what's that tell you? Defense wasn't great last year. They've got to improve. They were allowing 33.6% or points per game. So if you're going to improve and start beating some of the top teams, if you're going to win the games, you should win if you're a good football team. You've got to do better than that on defense, even if you're scoring 39.3 points a game. Guy to watch for me this year is going to be Cedric Tillman, wide receiver. I think he's a guy that could become a really special player in the SEC. This offense is going to be tailor-made for a guy like that to do really, really well. So it all depends. To me, this all depends on their offensive line, though.
I mean, you definitely nailed it there. They bring a lot of those guys back, which what we've said the last few weeks is if you've got one aspect of your team, whether it's one specific position or the entire side of the ball, if they were pretty bad and you bring a lot of them back, necessarily isn't a good thing. I'm not saying it's just an automatic, oh, well, they're going to suck again. Because some of these guys can develop. They added Florida transfer Gerald Mincey in. I know they lost Cade Mays last year to the draft, which was supposed to be one of the bright aspects of that offensive line. And losing him, which, to be honest, they hyped up Cade Mays quite a bit, and he was kind of mediocre at best. So, I mean, it's not like they just lost some stud. But, I mean, some of these guys may develop with Heupel coming back for a second year. I think bringing in a new body can only help. This defense is definitely not going to help this team whatsoever. I mean, there's a reason why they're having to score so many points to stay in games is because they're allowing that many points in the game. You mentioned they're bringing just about everyone back on defense. I don't know if I like that. But I think Tennessee games are going to be fun to watch because I think they're going to, once again, put up a ton of points.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cedric Tillman. Hendon Hooker is a guy that I really like. I think he's fun to watch. I mean, 33 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I don't care how many times you throw the ball. That's a good ratio.
Yeah.
They lost Velus Jones last year in the draft. Cedric Tillman's coming back. I really like this team. I don't like the fact that their defense is going to lose them games because I think that they could potentially have one of the most electric offenses in the SEC. But this defense is going to crush them.
Yeah, it'll be a problem.
It's going to be a problem for sure.
All right.
But I'm one of those teams that are high. I'm one of those people that are high on Tennessee.
Yeah, we'll see how high we both end up on them. See how high they can fly. Patrick, lastly, in the East, we've got Vanderbilt. Obviously, they've got a new coach, Clark Lea, who was formerly the Notre Dame defense coordinator. He's got a lot of work to do on both sides of the football, especially on defense. They were 13th against the run in the SEC last year. There's 14 teams, so that's not a great spot to be. Keep an eye out on running back Ramon Davis. I think he's got potential to be a very, very good running back, although they will likely be behind, so he might not get a whole lot of opportunities. But guess what, Patrick? At least they get to travel to Hawaii. That's their first game of the year. Now, I'll tell you this. I don't think they're going to come out of Hawaii with a win, but at least they get to go to Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, you get to go to Hawaii in August. That's awesome. I mean, if you're listening right now, kudos. Hope you're having fun riding the waves. That first game is going to be interesting because, I mean, I think Hawaii is playing – they're kind of playing with house money. They've got one of their guys, Timmy Chang, coming in. And I don't mean to turn this into a Hawaii Vanderbilt breakdown, but, I mean, this is supposed to be a game that one of the 2 or 3 that Vanderbilt wins, and it's not a guarantee. Let me just –
Oh, no.
Simple. Your first non-conference, which for Vanderbilt should be a guaranteed win, is not. So, I mean, every year I kind of catch myself in the hype train of the new Vanderbilt coach in terms of, oh, this is finally going to be the guy to turn it around. And every year I get let down. So I'm not going to buy into that this year. I fell for Derek Mason quite a bit. And then, Vanderbilt's just a different beast in the sense of like it. You really have to kind of play the system in a way. I think the transfer portal could help them out. I think it has in certain aspects in years past. I think you kind of have to do what basketball does in some cases, what baseball does in a lot of cases, and you can kind of play with their system, play with the whole academics aspect of it, because that's how they usually get a lot of their guys in baseball is, baseball only has, I forget the exact number of scholarships, and hardly any are ever full ride. But they bring in a lot of guys because they can get academic scholarships, or maybe they can get a minority scholarship or things like that. So they need to start playing the system like baseball does. They need to start attacking the transfer portal much heavier than they do, because I guarantee you, if you watch 1 or 2 Vanderbilt games and you see someone flying over the field or making big impact plays, I guarantee you it's a transfer. That's always the case. It always is. Somebody from the Ivy League. It's somebody from FCS. It's somebody maybe from one of the bigger P5 schools that didn't make it at like an Ohio State or Wisconsin or what have you, like it's always a transfer. So they really need to start hitting that harder. That's how they're really going to improve their team. You may have to circle in guys more frequently, obviously. But if you want to win a conference game or two, that's how you're going to have to do it.
Yeah, likely another long year if you're one of the few Vanderbilt football fans. Patrick, let's move over to the West, it might be the deeper division. Wouldn't be surprised. But obviously, we're going to start with Alabama. I think they're the easy favorite in the West. Bryce Young, of course, returning Heisman winner. Can he repeat? That's always hard to do. We'll see what happens there. They've got to replace a lot in the wide receiver room. We, of course, know who all left. Not a short list of people who left. But it's Alabama. There are plenty of new options to bring in that are going to be just as fast and just as good. And there's going to be somebody that probably should have been, a superstar last year on 86 other teams in the nation, but they went to Alabama. Anyways, offensive line was pretty inconsistent last year, and that might be the biggest question mark for this team again this year. Defense, they'll be fine.
Defense is going to be great.
Game last year, they're probably going to be better. Two guys to watch out for me: running back Jahmyr Gibbs. They always have a running back that is, top of the nation sort of guy. That's going to be the guy this year. And then, of course, on defense, watch out for maybe the best name in college football, Kool-Aid McKinstry, to be swatting balls around out there. Alabama, again, they're an easy favorite to win the West. We'll talk about some of these other teams, or we'll talk about the rest of these teams, obviously, and whether that actually ends up happening. But Alabama, reload.
Yeah, Alabama reload for sure. I started to question the wide receiver group, but then I looked at some names that they are bringing in, like from the transfer portal. You mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs coming from Georgia Tech. They're bringing in Jermaine Burton from Georgia. And if you've got a 4-star receiver from Georgia coming your way, I'm sure he's going to be slotted in as a starter. I don't think there's much to worry about. They've got Tyler Harrell coming in from Louisville as well, who's a 4-star. So I'm sure both those guys are going to be starters. I'm not worried at all about Alabama. And, I don't know if you should ever worry about Alabama.
Well, as long as Nick Saban's there, you shouldn't.
Exactly. Their toughest game is going to be probably A&M. That's going to be a revenge game, which means they win by 40.
Probably.
Outside of that, it's a pretty easy schedule, in my opinion. So, yeah, they're going to run the table once again. They're going to be in the playoff. Next team.
Well, that next team, Patrick, is probably the one that most of our viewers will be ready to hear about finally. We are to the point where we're going to preview Arkansas. Patrick, Sam Pittman, head coach, has the Hogs absolutely running at this point in time, and the 4 returning offensive linemen they have should keep them running quite a bit. KJ Jefferson got a lot better last year and looks like he's going to still be improving or keep improving. There's a solid group of transfers that are coming in at wide receiver. The big question for me for this team, Patrick, on the offensive side of the ball is who's going to replace Treylon Burks. Obviously, Treylon Burks was the big play guy last year, 66 catches, just an absolute nightmare to deal with. Some of those transfers that are coming in, Jaden Hazelwood from OU, who is a pretty good pass catcher. I obviously watched him a lot last year. He's not Treylon Burks, but it doesn't hurt to have a guy like that. And then Matt Landers from Toledo. Of course, you've also got Warren Thompson and Keytron Jackson. So you've got 3 or 4 guys there who can really make a difference, which is probably better than last year's wide receiver group as a whole. But obviously, again, you're missing that giant playmaker in Treylon Burks. Defense relied a lot last year on bending and not breaking, and lost a lot of starters from last year. But they're bringing in a ton of transfer talent, which should help. The big question mark for me, other than the big play on offense, is going to be how tough this non-conference schedule is, how tough the schedule is in general. Hogs seem to always get a very, very tough schedule. Of course, they're in the SEC. But outside of Missouri State, there are no cakewalks in the season. Especially, look, you open the season against Cincinnati, who, yes, we've talked about as having to replace a lot, especially at the quarterback position. But that team is not going to be a slouch to start the season. And then you get that South Carolina team we talked about. You play Missouri State. There's your your week off essentially. Then you get A&M, Alabama. Then you got Mississippi State. Then you got BYU, who is not a walkover or not a
It's at home. It's at BYU, so that's going to make it even tougher.
That's going to be rough because Mississippi State's going to be a tough game. Mississippi State might not be the best team in the conference, but that is at Mississippi State. Stark Vegas is a weird place to play. Mike Leach is a weird guy. Weird things happen in those types of games, so that could be a tough one. So you got 5 of 6 games to start the season that are really, really tough. 7 of 6, or no, that math doesn't work. 6 of 7 really tough games. Then you get a bye week. Then you get Auburn. Then you got Liberty, which is not a pushover either necessarily. Obviously, they're going to replace Malik Willis, so that makes it a little bit easier maybe. We'll see who they have at quarterback. Then you get LSU, which is always tough because it's the actual rivalry game. And then you got Ole Miss, who is going to be interesting because Lane Kiffin always has his team interesting. And you got to close out the season in what is now the rivalry against Missouri, which I still – every time I look at the schedule and I see that Thanksgiving weekend is Missouri versus Arkansas, not LSU versus Arkansas, I want to riot.
Because we all want to. Even Missouri fans want to.
Speaking of no free ads, but shout out to Superior Brew House or Brewery in Hot Springs, since we're talking about Arkansas.
No, I mean this Arkansas team.
They want.
This Arkansas team is definitely going to be very interesting. This schedule is very intriguing. A lot of great home games. Glad I'm a season ticket holder. You mentioned a lot of key things, like you mentioned the receiver group. Obviously, Treylon Burks was basically the offense, especially the pass attack. But I think that there can be some key freshmen who can replace what Burks was able to do. And I remember a time when Burks was one of those key freshmen coming in and making an impact immediately. So, I mean, you mentioned a guy like Hazelwood, who's a former 5-star recruit, came from Oklahoma. You mentioned Matt Landers, who reportedly is just like crushing it in camp. I think Isaiah Satega, with just buku's amount of speed, is going to make an impact. I think he's already won the job as a punt and kick returner.
Never heard of speed.
Right? So, I mean, with that literal track speed that he has, he needs to be on the field in any way possible.
Right.
And returning kicks and punts, I mean, it should be a no-brainer. There's several other receivers who should be coming in. From what I've heard, literally, so there's 3 key top guys. Satega, who went to Fayetteville High, Sam Mbake, I think that's from Florida, and then Quincy McAdoo. All 3 of them are going to travel for every game. So that should tell you something. Like, all 3 are probably going to have some type of impact.
Yeah.
One transfer on the defensive side of the ball that a lot of people are drooling over is Drew Sanders, linebacker that came from Alabama. Apparently, he's just flying all over the field, which is exactly what we need, especially teaming up with Bumper Pool.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, Drew Sanders is probably going to do what Grant Morgan did, which is great.
Shout out Greenwood.
Jalen Catalon coming back is going to be huge. I think this defensive backfield is going to be much improved. There have been 1 or 2 guys that transferred out, like Greg Brooks, but plenty of guys have transferred in and are going to slide in those positions. Obviously, you mentioned the offensive line being great. I think this is going to be a similar tough-nosed team. I think this schedule is going to be electric for Arkansas fans. And here in a few minutes, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you and I both think of where this Arkansas team is going to finish up. Patrick, a team that I'm pretty sure we're both going to be fairly similar on as well is the Auburn Tigers. And Patrick, No, Gene Chiswick, Mr. 5 and 19 is not there, but Brian Harsin is, and it's been a odd offseason. I think might be the nicest way for Brian to say what has happened with Brian Harsin this year. Bo Nix obviously transferred away.
So this is my problem with the Auburn Tigers.
They have 4 options at quarterback. We talked about Missouri having 3 options and therefore no options. Auburn has 4 options, so therefore 0 options, which is somehow worse.
Yeah. My problem with him, like you mentioned, they got Bo Nix to walk and go to Oregon, which was best case scenario for them. And they did nothing to capitalize on that. They had JT Finley, who is, I understand that he's got all the hype as far as almost beating Alabama on a bum leg. But outside of that, it's vanilla as vanilla could be. He does nothing exciting. Maybe he could be more exciting on 2 legs. I don't know.
Well, and look,
pretty sure they have Calzada from Texas A&M, who is also just the most boring quarterback.
Well, look, and it's fitting that they have all these boring quarterbacks because there are no playmakers on this offense. Like, this offense is almost completely devoid of playmakers. And so, look, you lose a quarterback like Bo Nix, who I didn't like as a quarterback. I didn't think was that good as a quarterback, but he was like Mr. Auburn. And so for me, to have a guy like Bo Nix transfer away tells you where this team is at, tells you what is going on kind of behind the scenes, although we're all it's very evident what's happening. Like, tells me enough to know that, like, sell everything to do with Auburn this year. Defense was pretty good, but it lost a bunch of starters or important starters, and it has almost 0 depth. So you're looking at a team that has no offensive playmakers, has probably a slightly worse defense. They'll be okay, but and no quarterback. Like, and a coach who has been embroiled in controversy this offseason. And frankly, you and I watched him at Arkansas State. I just don't think he's that great of a coach.
No, I mean, I think one of the worst career decisions that he's made, it was leaving Boise State.
Oh, he should have never left Boise.
He should have never left Boise State. I think he was starting to turn them into like the old Boise State back from when we were kids.
Yeah. Well, and
he had a chance to revamp that.
Yeah.
He was a Boise State guy.
And that's a spot where, look, he's a Boise State guy, like you just mentioned, and Boise State is like App State in the Sun Belt, in that they just reload in that conference and reload. And you're Boise State, you've got that pull of, okay, maybe you've got a guy who wants to go to Washington or Washington State. He's not. Those coaches don't think he's quite good enough to be in the Pac-12. So where else are you going to go? You go, well, I'm going to stay close to home. Let me go to Boise State. And you get a lot of guys who go to Boise State as underrated guys and come out of Boise State as, wow, this guy was actually a pretty good football player.
Yeah, Boise State is one of the few G5 schools who can recruit nationally. Like, they can go into a room and even, like, I mean, it was different back from when we were in high school versus these kids now. But, like, Boise State is still one of those G5 programs where, like, you're standing out.
Right, and they roll out
whether it's a high school in Arkansas or a high school in North Carolina or Arizona. Like, you can actually, if you're Boise, you can recruit kids nationally.
Well, and you roll out enough jersey options that people like them. Long story short, Auburn is not going to be good this year. Let's move on, Patrick, to a team that question mark might not be good this year. Is Brian Kelly a Southerner now? I don't know.
I am all the way.
That may be my favorite thing from this offseason. Look, it's LSU. They've got a ton of talent. Like, the talent is always going to be there. It's good. It's always there. But can they get it all together? Defense wasn't great last year at all. They were really bad against the pass. You've got to keep your weapons healthy if you're LSU. They've had a little bit of trouble with that in the last couple of years. To me, what do we always say about LSU, Patrick?
Always a quarterback away.
And again, another question where I go, who's the quarterback? You got Garrett Nussmeier, Miles Brennan, and Jaden Daniels. Like,
I mean, I'm sure it's Jaden Daniels winning that competition, but at the same time, like,
is that a good thing?
Jaden Daniels winning that competition doesn't really tell me anything.
Right.
It's, oh, he probably should have won that job. Like, he had no business losing that job.
Yeah. So, I think it's just going to be – I think it might be another rough year. They finished 6-7 last year. I think this might be another rough year because it might take Brian Kelly a year or two. Now, granted, Brian Kelly's also a scumbag, so there's no telling.
Well, he's definitely playing the he's honestly, in terms of being a first-year coach at one of the blue blood colleges in the country, what he's doing well is playing in the transfer portal. So he's brought in, he hit that hard. Obviously, he brought in JT Daniels. He brought in guys like Savion Banks from Ohio State. He brought in Colby Fields from South Carolina. He brought in Greg Brooks from Arkansas. I mean, he brought in Mekhi Wingo from Missouri. And he hit the portal as hard as you possibly could and brought in all types of talent. So, I mean, I think this LSU team, especially later in the year, I forgot about Joe Fuchsia from Arkansas transferring in as well. Like, they have the potential, especially late in the year, to really have something. But I don't know if they're really going to have anything on offense.
But here's the problem with that.
It's going to be a little bit tougher, but I don't.
Here's your problem, though, Patrick. They might be a better football team at the end of the year, but the end of the year is where the depth of their rough schedule is. I mean, you open against Florida State and Southern and Mississippi State and New Mexico, Lobo Country, and Auburn. Like, those are winnable games. Like, most of those are winnable games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mississippi State might be a little bit of a toss-up. Okay, so you start off the season well. Then you get Tennessee, Florida, who might or might not be good. Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, you play UAB, and then you finish up the season against Texas A&M. Like, you could see this team start easily 5-0, right? Maybe even 6-0 if they can beat Tennessee, or maybe we'll say 6-1 or 6-1. You lose to Tennessee, you beat Florida, but then you've got to play Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas A&M to close out the year. You could lose 4 of your last 5 games easily, even if you're a better team than last year. Or even if you're a better team by the end of the year than you were at the beginning of the year. So for me, this is a little bit less of, what is this team? It's a little bit of, okay, well, Brian Kelly, I think, has to get off to a hot start. Okay, well, you can do that.
Yeah.
But if you run into injury trouble at any point in time in the season,
you're screwed.
If you don't have a quarterback, let's say by the Tennessee game, who is lighting it up, you could be, let's be generous and say 4-1 going into the Tennessee game. That's probably not generous. That's probably fine. That's probably fair. If you're 4-1 going into the Tennessee game and you don't have a solid quarterback, you're not outscoring Tennessee. And then you've got track races against at least Tennessee, Ole Miss, Alabama, and probably Arkansas and Texas A&M. So you've got 5 of your last 7 games are going to be track meets.
They're not built for that.
Right, they're not built for that at all. So I think this team could, similar to South Carolina, this could be a better team on the field than they actually are on paper. But I think Brian Kelly's going to have a little bit of an issue. Plus, Brian Kelly's got to figure out the SEC. Like, that's something we talk about with. I mean, look, what was his record at, or how did his career at Notre Dame go against some of these SEC teams? Like, not very good. We all remember. If you just watched, he was there when. Manti Te'o was there, right? So, like, I just watched that doc, which is a fascinating documentary. But like we see, the joke has been that Notre Dame shows up to these games against SEC style opponents and just gets blown out because they just don't know how to. They can't compete with the athletes. They don't know how to compete against those athletes. It's a different place to play. It just means more like, I know that's kind of a joke even amongst SEC fans.
It also is.
But like,
it also rings true. There's a reason why a school like Notre Dame chooses so adamantly to be independent.
Right.
Or when they're not independent per se, they're in a conference like the ACC. Like,
well, and
they choose who they get to play.
Yeah.
Choose their entire schedule.
And look at who they choose to play. They rarely play SEC.
They're not choosing Georgia. They're not choosing.
Yeah.
Well, at one point they did choose Arkansas, I'm pretty sure, and that didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
They're not choosing A&M. They're not. I mean, for whatever reason, they're not even choosing Vanderbilt.
That's my big question. Well, they don't have any business. Nobody has business playing Vanderbilt. That to me is going to be the big question. Brian Kelly's got to adjust. They've got to find a quarterback, and they've got to stay healthy. And that's not something they've been able to do the last couple of years. Let's move on, Patrick, to Mississippi State. The Mike Leach show once again down in Stark Vegas. And again, I think this is another team that is going to maybe be a tougher team than the record ends up showing. But they've got an absolutely brutal schedule in SEC play. They play Memphis to start the season, Arizona. Those are easy. LSU obviously is on their side. Bowling Green, which actually is a tougher game than it may look on paper. Obviously, in division, they've got A&M and Arkansas. And then they've got to go on the road to Kentucky, on the road to Alabama, which is obviously in division. You get a break at Auburn at home, but you get to play Georgia as well. So they pulled Georgia and Kentucky, which is hard in the cross division.
That's not fair.
So for me, this is, again, a team that's going to be good, maybe, but hard schedule for them to have to overcome. Will Rogers was pretty good at quarterback last year, better than maybe we thought he was going to be. Running back should be fine. Defense is okay, actually. Was actually okay last year, which is an interesting thing to think about with a Mike Leach coach team. And they bring back 8 guys. Emmanuel Forbes, who's one of the maybe better corners in the SEC. So keep an eye out for them. I think they're going to maybe win a game or two that they have no business winning, and they'll make an awkward opponent for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, September they could potentially go. Also, they could potentially go 4-0 in September.
Yeah.
So they get A&M at home. Arkansas, let's not forget, last year against Arkansas, that was a literal last-second win for Arkansas. I mean, they kept that game extremely close from start to finish. So, I mean, don't be surprised if they actually beat Arkansas at home this year. We talk about Kentucky, Alabama. Auburn's a winnable game for sure. And then you never know what happens in the Egg Bowl. I mean, this is the most widely ranged outcome for probably any team in the SEC, because this team could win 5 games, or this team could probably potentially win about 8 games. So I mean, and they open up the season. I'm sure they're chomping at the bits against Memphis, because they last year in a game they shouldn't have lost, and a play that happened that game that essentially cost them the game, which, if I remember right, should not have been a touchdown for Memphis. And you know how much I love Memphis.
Yeah.
So they're chomping at the bits trying to get this revenge against Memphis. Then I mean, this could easily be another 5-win season, or this could be 8, maybe even 9 wins.
Yeah. I think, to me, this Mississippi State team is similar to how we always talk about Kansas State. Like, it could be, you said, it could be a very good, like, they won a bunch of games, or it could be a much lower, like, kind of didn't do as good as we thought we would.
Outside of Georgia and Alabama, any of these games are toss-ups.
Yeah. Let's move on to the other side of the Egg Bowl, Patrick, which, of course, is Ole Miss. We got Lane Kiffin, of course, still there. The defense was a lot better last year, but, of course, we know the strength of this team is going to be Kiffin's offense. They've got to replace a lot of important people. Obviously, Matt Corral's gone, Snoop Connor, Dontario Drummond, just some of the pieces that are gone. But you would talk about a guy who's used the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin has used the transfer portal and has done it a ton. The big question on offense, is it going to be Jackson Dart, as most people figure, or is Luke Altmaier going to push to be a starter? I figure it's probably going to be Jackson Dart, like a guy that and just has the better name. Like, you should be playing. If you're Jackson Dart, you should be starting. they bring back 3 guys up front on the offensive line, so that helps to reload a lot of what they replaced. That's not going to be a super big worry for them. Defense is going to be kind of in a similar situation. They lost a lot of guys, but they brought a lot of guys in. So I think this team is a lot, maybe even more of a question mark for me than Mississippi State, just because when you're bringing in that many pieces who have never played together, who knows? It could all work well. It could all go to crap very, very fast. One thing working out for them is they do have a very favorable schedule. They play Troy, Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Tulsa. They get Vanderbilt in the cross-conference matchup. They do have to play Kentucky, but that's the toughest game they have for most of the season. Let's see, until really week 9. Week 9, they play LSU in week 8, play Texas A&M in week 9 before they close out the season. A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi State. So a tough back end of the season. You hope that by then you've got a ton of momentum and can maybe do something with it. This could, again, but like you said, Mississippi State, this could be a team that maybe wins 7 games or could win as many as 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Kentucky game I've got circled for sure.
Yeah.
Because that's going to tell us, I think, everything that we're going to need to know. Because those first 4 games, like, they'll probably win by 17, 20 points. Like, I'm not worried about those 4. Those are tune-up games. All 4 of them are. Kentucky is going to tell me everything because of the established unit that Kentucky has. Granted, it's going to be at Ole Miss. That's going to help them a lot. Mm-hmm. But going up against a team that it has a complete core unit, is played together, they're going to be a well-oiled machine as well. I mean, we kind of talk about Kentucky. Like we said earlier, they can climb up the rankings until they get to somebody that's similar. Well, this could be that someone similar.
Yeah.
So I think Kentucky's either going to finally beat one of those top schools in the conference, or it's going to be, kind of another swing and a miss for Kentucky versus with this Ole Miss group. If they end up beating Kentucky in October, this is when we're going to see what this new, completely remodeled team is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, they're just a team to for sure keep an eye on. Last, Patrick, let's move down to Texas A&M, that swampy city area of College Station, and talk about them for a second. Look, the big question is how good is this expensive recruiting class? And I'm not joking when I say expensive recruiting class. Like, they spent a lot of money to get this class in. Does that bump them up to the next level? One of the issues we saw last year with them, obviously they lost Haynes King, their starting quarterback in the second game of the season, and then just really didn't have the depth at quarterback to handle anything. Max Johnson transfers in from LSU. Is that a good thing? Who knows?
No, that's not. If you have a quarterback that's transferring to you from LSU, you have nothing.
Well, I mean, you might be at a crap team and decide to get away from a crap team. So that can happen.
You have nothing.
You probably have nothing. And then you've got freshman Connor.
LSU was always a quarterback away.
Right. Well,
if someone who's always a quarterback away is giving you a quarterback, no, you don't want that.
Quarterback man left. It doesn't matter. He's going to hopefully – they're hoping that brings some depth to the team. You got true freshman Connor Wegman coming in as well. Like, you hope you have some depth at quarterback, and should Haynes King get hurt again, going to be good, fine at running back with Devin Achane and some of the other guys, and their offensive line should be fine. They've got to be better on the outside. Wide receiver core was a little iffy last year. They've got to be better there. Defense is one of the best in the nation. 15.9 points per game in the SEC. That's pretty good competition to have to put that up against. So that is not the side to necessarily worry about. They do have to replace a lot, including they replace their defensive coordinator. DJ Durkin is now there. So they've got to replace a lot, but this is kind of one of those cases of yeah, you're replacing a bunch, but you're going to replace them with some really good people. Another team for me that is going to go essentially as far as their quarterback room can take them. And, teams that are good in a lot of areas of football, quarterback is the one that can either take you to the next level or keep you down at the one you're at. I think they'll be fine. They've got obviously they'll have some very, very important games. I mean, all these teams obviously have important games, but they've got some important ones. And maybe the hardest part of their schedule is that it's pretty front loaded. Actually, you look at it, you get Sam Houston out of the gate. Okay, fine, whatever. You get a nice warm up game. Then you got App State, which is not a slouch. You got Miami, not a slouch. Then you play Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Alabama before you get a bye week. I think they're going to be begging for that bye week by the time it comes. And then after that, I think they'll be fine. You got South Carolina, Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, UMass, and LSU. So I think, once they get to week 8, they're fine. It's can they get past Miami? Can they get past Arkansas? Can they get past Alabama? Those are the 3 big games that I think could really give them problems, and especially if they don't have the quarterback situation solid at that point, could really cause them problems. So in a way, to me, they have a 3-game season.
I mean, to me, you mentioned the expensive recruiting class. I think to me in 2022, most of them aren't going to make that much of an impact. Like, you think of a recruiting class itself, usually not many of those guys are making a huge impact as freshmen. Now, because Alabama, and I hate to compare them to Alabama, but hear me out. Schools like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, those type of schools have always the best recruiting class in the country. And not all of them are seeing the field an exorbitant amount. Not all of them are going to be impact guys.
Here's the difference. The difference is, Patrick, is that Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those teams have had the top recruiting classes for 15 years. And so you're then talking about, well, do I start this top defensive lineman of his recruiting class, or do I start this top defensive lineman of his recruiting class?
Choice of 5-star guys.
When you're talking about a team like Texas A&M, you're talking about, yes, there are absolutely guys there who are good. There are absolutely guys who, they've had pretty good recruiting classes for several years now. But one guy from that recruiting class could be the next superstar, because if you're a team like Texas A&M who went 8-4 last year, you're missing a piece here, you're missing a piece there. And so what you're doing, you're approaching recruiting completely differently. Alabama is looking at it as, okay, well, in 2 years, who's going to be the starter? In 2 years, is this guy going to be improved enough that from what he was as a freshman that he's going to start? I've got this guy who's just waiting to go his turn to go to the NFL, waiting for his turn to go in the first round of the NFL draft. And that's those guys are going there to sit and wait for 2 years so they can play a 3rd year and then get drafted in the first round. If you go to A&M and you're a top level recruit, you're kind of expecting to make an impact, I think, a lot quicker. Similar to how you would if you went to Arkansas. I think Texas A&M and Arkansas and Tennessee and Kentucky are those teams are kind of all in that same area of yeah, we might have an established starter at quarterback, but we lost a guy like Treylon Burks at wide receiver. So now we need a guy like Treylon Burks to come in to play receiver. And so I think it is a little bit more important for Texas A&M to look at some of those guys from this class and say, hey, can you make an impact this year? Because if you don't make an impact this year, our season's not going to be as good. Alabama, 8 of their 5 stars won't start this year, however many they have, won't start this year, and that's okay. But Texas A&M, I think, is going to be required to have 1 or 2 guys that actually does.
But they're going to need them to, otherwise they're going to have another 8-4 season. Because that's kind of what I expect to happen with this team. I think obviously they unloaded the bankroll in terms of recruiting, but I don't know how better they got.
Yeah.
They lost some key pieces on defense, like you mentioned, for the reload. But I'm worried about the offense. I'm worried about the quarterback position. I'm worried about the pieces that this quarterback position is going to be given. So
Yeah.
I think the defense can probably keep them in most games. It's can the quarterback, whoever that's going to be, take them over the hump and actually win them the game? And I don't know. Until I see it with my own eyes, and especially with as tough as a non-conference schedule this group has, let alone SEC play, I just don't see them being much better.
Yeah. All right. Well, Patrick, let's go down then and actually make our picks. You tell me there. We'll talk about standings as well as we go. So we'll start in the East. That's the easy again. That's where we started before. So we'll start there again. I'm gonna guess you have Vanderbilt at the bottom.
Yeah, I have them going 3-9.
3-9. Okay. Now I'm gonna need you to tell me very quickly who their wins are because
it's just conference play. So I have them beating Hawaii, Elon, and Northern Illinois.
Okay, well, I had them going 1-11 because I have them losing to Hawaii and also to Northern Illinois.
That's completely fair.
So I think it's going to be a tough start to the season for them. All right, next, that would be – so they're in 7th. So who's you got in 6th?
I've got Missouri finishing 4-8.
Okay, 4-8. I also have Missouri there, but I have them finishing 5-7. So just one game different there. So not too big of a shock. Kind of that that's just the area they should fit in. All right, Patrick, who you got in the 5 spot?
In the 5 spot, I have Florida finishing 6-6.
Patrick, you want to guess who I have in the 5 spot?
Florida
finishing 6-6.
Hey.
All right, so I'm going to guess next up you have South Carolina at the 4 spot.
South Carolina 7-5.
7-5 South Carolina. I have South Carolina in the 4 spot, but they are 6-6. So I've got them losing. I'm actually curious. Do you know what game you had them? Let's see.
South Carolina, I have them losing to Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Clemson.
Ooh, you got them beating A&M. Okay.
I do.
Okay, because I have them losing to Clemson, Tennessee, A&M, Georgia, Kentucky, and Arkansas. So there's my 5. All right, so Patrick, at the 3 spot, who you got?
I've got Tennessee finishing 9-3.
9-3 Tennessee. Well, Patrick, guess what? I have a 9-3 Tennessee as well.
Hey.
All right. So
What 3 wins or what 3 losses do you have? I bet they're the same.
Let's see. Tennessee, I have losing to Alabama, Kentucky, Georgia.
Yep, all 3.
Okay, so I'm going to guess you got Kentucky at 2.
Kentucky at 2, finishing 10-2, losing to Georgia and Ole Miss.
Okay, I have them at 11-1, only losing to Georgia.
There we go.
So wild. All right, so you got Georgia at the 1.
Georgia the 1, 12-0.
12-0. That's what I have them at as well. I think that's just who that team is. I think. Okay, so that's that. Let's go now over to the West. And why don't you? I've got Auburn at the bottom, Patrick, and they are finishing 2-10.
Ooh, I have Mississippi State at the bottom, finishing 5-7.
Oh, okay, interesting. We are definitely not the same there.
Yeah.
All right, who you got at the 6?
The 6, I have Auburn finishing 5-7.
Oh, okay. I'm curious who you think they beat.
I think they beat Mercer, San Jose State,
Fair.
Missouri. I think so. I have them beating Arkansas. I think they just have our number.
Interesting.
And that's also coming off of a bye. Plus the SEC, there's just there's so much parity.
Yeah.
So I have them beating Arkansas and then Western Kentucky.
Interesting. I have them going 2-10. The only two games I have them winning are Mercer and San Jose State.
Wow.
I think they start off hot and then, well, as hot as you can when you're starting against Mercer.
When you're playing against Mercer and San Jose State, you don't have to be hot to win those.
Yeah. And then I think Western Kentucky is going to be a bit of a trap game for them. They're going to come off a loss to they're coming off,
and then they're just focusing on Alabama.
Yeah, and you got losses to, well, by that point you've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or 8 games straight, according to mine. You've lost to Penn State, Missouri, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and then you got Alabama the next week, which I think at that point you kind of just go, okay, well, we're not going to play hard against Western Kentucky. We're going to try our best to beat Alabama, which is going to work.
Saving all that energy.
Yeah. All right, Patrick, who you got at 5?
5, I've got LSU finishing 6-6.
Okay, LSU at 6-6. I have Mississippi State finishing in that spot at 6-6, actually. So, similar record for a team there. All right, who you got at number 4?
Number 4, I have A&M finishing 9-3.
Ooh, okay. This for me, it was kind of a toss-up, I guess, how these teams finished here. I have Ole Miss in the 4th spot, and I have them finishing 8-4. So probably just just a teeny bit different there.
For number 3, I have Arkansas finishing 9-3.
Oh, okay. Well, we're officially different here as well. We've been completely different on this one.
Yeah.
So why not keep it going? I have Texas A&M finishing 3. I actually have them finishing 10-2, which is kind of one of those functions of just how their schedule works out. I think they lose to Arkansas. I have them losing to Alabama. And then obviously winning everything else. I think they sneak by Miami, and maybe sneak by A&M. Or sneak by Mississippi State. Although I could see Mississippi State being a trap game for them, being sandwiched in between Arkansas and Alabama. But Patrick, that means I have Arkansas at number 2, and Patrick, I have them finishing 10-2.
Who's the other loss?
I have them losing to Alabama and BYU.
Oh yeah, BYU's the other loss.
Yep.
Hey, a lot of people actually are saying that could easily happen.
Yeah, I think that's a tough game for them.
Yeah, absolutely. For my number 2, I have Ole Miss finishing 10-2.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. I think that's just a team that kind of is so up or down. I have them finishing 8-4. 8-4 seems realistic. You say 10-2. I'm also not surprised by that. Obviously,
I have them basically winning 8 straight games, losing to A&M, getting their bye week, losing to Bama, and then winning their last 2.
That seems very, very doable. Obviously, Patrick, that means last up, number 1, winning the West. I have Alabama at 12-0.
12-0 Bama.
Yeah, you look at their schedule; it's just impossible. Not impossible, but it seems unlikely that they lose. I think Arkansas gives them a good run. I think A&M gives them a good run. I think Ole Miss gives them a good run. But it's too good.
Yeah, I mean A&M is an interesting one just because A&M beat them last year. Outside of that, I mean, you look at how close that Arkansas game was last year, so that one's kind of interesting. But the only other team that I think could potentially give them a run for their money, depending on how they do play out leading up to that game, is Ole Miss.
Okay, so that means for your SEC championship, my SEC championship, we both have Alabama playing Georgia. So real fast, Patrick, tell me who wins.
Bama.
I also have Bama winning.
You could tell you real fast. I told you real fast.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do real fast before we make our – if you can do it, Patrick, do you know who you would have in your 4 teams in the playoff?
Oh, gosh. I would have Utah. I have Alabama. I'd probably have Georgia and then Ohio State.
Okay.
Which I don't think the ACC winner would be in there, and I don't think the Big 12 winner would be in there. So it would be those four.
Yeah, I think for me it is very similar. I think obviously Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, not in any particular order.
Yeah.
And then Utah for me. So I think we're actually exactly.
Yeah.
I tell you what, we are going to take a very quick break. I know we're right at the end of this thing. For the most part, we're going to take a break, and then we will make our picks for this week. So if you're watching live, just hang out for a second. If you're not watching live, we will be back very, very shortly. Okay, welcome back. Sorry about that. It actually didn't go to the other screen that it was supposed to go to. Not baby. What you gonna do? That's what happens when you're a little bit live. Somebody wet their diaper quite a bit.
I think what happened was Charlotte wants to make sure that her picks get submitted.
You know what? That's it. You know what? I thought about doing that, having a second entry that was just her picks and somehow doing it so that
what you need to do is for like bigger games throughout the week, have like 2 toys or something in front of her and have her pick.
I like this.
And have like teams like written on paper in front of them. And that could be her picks.
That'll get some juice. So look forward to that. We won't show her face, but we will show her hand picking something.
We need a weekly segment of Charlotte's selections.
Kind of like a weekly segment, which Patrick, we need to bring back for a half second. Do you know the segment I'm talking about?
Is it about Patrick McCaw?
Yes. So we'll update you on Patrick McCaw next week.
The world needs to know.
So
where in the world is Patrick McCaw?
Where is he? We'll talk about that next week, though. Patrick, let's go real quick. I don't know. I don't have them in front of me in. All right, let me pull up another.
The pick'em games.
Yeah,
I have them in front of me right now.
I have them in front of me. I don't have them in front of me in the original order, which is how we'll actually pick through them before the confidence picks, because obviously it's going to be too hard to try and keep up with. Dang, that's not going to work.
I have them in the original. I guess the original order because I haven't picked any of them.
Oh, you haven't made your picks yet?
No.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, why don't you tell me? Why don't you tell me
the first game to kick things off? Is going to be Rutgers versus Boston College.
Okay, so we'll just go through real quick and announce who we have. Boston College is my pick.
I would definitely have Boston College.
And I won't have you rank them because you'll have to do that. That'd be very hard.
I'm going to do that right now.
All right, so we're both picking Boston College. Who's next?
Next is Cincinnati at Arkansas.
Ooh, Cincinnati at Arkansas. Well, we obviously just know we just did the SEC thing. I picked Arkansas to win this game. Yeah,
spread is 6.5, I believe. Arkansas, so basically whether or not they win by a touchdown. So I'm going Arkansas as well.
Cool. So when I was making their schedule or picking every game in their schedule this year, I waffled between do I pick Cincinnati or do I pick BYU? I think they're going to lose one of those non-conference games.
Yeah.
But I think they actually come out hot against Cincinnati, who's replacing obviously Desmond Ridder and a bunch of other pieces, and so I think that is why.
If we're going to lose one of those games, it's going to be BYU.
Yeah, I think BYU is a toughie. All right, what's the next game?
Next game is Oregon versus Georgia. I'm going Georgia.
I am going Georgia as well. I think it takes a little bit for Bo Nix to get going for Oregon, and Georgia's going to pick up right where they left off. All right, who's next?
This one is a joke. It's Arizona versus San Diego State. I'm going San Diego State.
A joke? I'm not picking Arizona. Of course, I'm picking San Diego State. Who's next?
That's the joke. The next one is actually could be game of the week potential. Honestly, it's Houston versus UTSA.
Oh, this is definitely the G5 game of the week.
Absolutely. Houston coming in ranked 24th in the country. We know how well UTSA was last year. To be completely honest, I may pick UTSA.
Dude, I'm going to change it. You made me think about it a second time, so I'm changing it. I had Houston. I'm picking UTSA.
Yeah, I mean they lost some pieces, but they also brought some transfers in. So I'm going UTSA here. Next game, we mentioned them earlier: BYU versus South Florida. It's going to be at South Florida, but I'm picking BYU.
Yeah, I don't think that matters. This is actually my number 10 confidence or my 10-point confidence one. I'm picking BYU.
Next game, it's going to be a fun one. Utah versus Florida. I'm going Utah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will think this maybe should be lower on a confidence pick. I'm taking Utah over Florida. I don't think it's going to be particularly close either.
No, definitely not. If I remember right, the spread is actually much closer than I think it should be. But I think it was like 2 or 3.
I have it at 7. I'll put it that way.
There you go. Next game, Notre Dame versus Ohio State.
This would be where I would play the game of the week sound, but the soundboard wasn't working earlier, so I'm going to skip that.
You know what? I don't think you should have done it anyway.
Oh, you don't think this is the game of the week?
I mean, by terms of rankings by default, but I think Notre Dame is just pure hype. Like if this is a Notre Dame hype train team, this is going to be it. Like I understand what all has happened with this Notre Dame team, but at the end of the day, it's Notre Dame.
Well, and you would put Georgia, Oregon as the game of the week then?
I would rather have Georgia, Oregon. I'd rather have Houston, UTSA as the overall game of the week. I'd rather have Cincinnati, Arkansas as game of the week.
Well, okay.
I'd rather have Boise State, Oregon State as game of the week over this game. I think this is going to be like a 17-point at minimum win by Ohio State.
Well, I don't think this is going to be close. So we will retroactively pull the game of the week from this game. So this is no longer the game of the week, but I'm picking Ohio State to win this game by quite a bit. Who's next?
Next, we mentioned this game earlier. It's Memphis versus Mississippi State. I'm picking Mississippi State.
I'm picking Mississippi State. It's pretty high on my confidence. Who's next?
Last game is going to be Boise State versus Oregon State. We are big-time OSU fans here. I'm picking Oregon State.
This is game of the week, Patrick. We're officially going to make this one the game of the week then.
It's going to be one better game than Ohio State. And
we're both going to be picking Oregon State to win this game.
Yeah, I'm picking Oregon State. And then, of course, other than the tiebreaker for the Notre Dame Ohio State game, that is the end of the picks for week 1.
So those are our picks. Make sure you get your picks in. Again, Mattyice and the Chief 2022. You do have to have your games. I think on ours, the way it works is it has to be locked. You have to have your pick in before the game starts. So if you wait to pick a 6 p.m. kickoff game until 5 p.m., I think you can still pick it. But don't waste your time with that. Do it right now do it as soon as you listen to it, because sometimes there's that weird random Friday game or Thursday game. I think these are all Saturday games, but
they're all Saturday. November 3rd or November
September
3rd.
So you actually have a little bit. Obviously, we actually have a couple of games this week. One of them being, and Patrick, make sure you have it set to save. I know that Patrick has lost several picks. Yeah, so make sure you do that. Obviously, the game of the week for us this week that is actually happening this week, August 27th, because that's 2 days away, Patrick. We have football games, is going to be Vanderbilt at Hawaii. There's some other decent games. You've got Nevada taking on New Mexico State. That's not like a great game, but it's not. I mean, it's football. North Texas, UTEP. Florida A&M, North Carolina, Charlotte versus Florida Atlantic. Duquesne is playing Florida State. Wyoming playing Illinois. UConn, Utah State. That could be an interesting one. Former Arkansas State coach Blake Anderson. Idaho State, UNLV. Is Tate Martell still on the roster?
Tate Martell is not playing college football.
This is the first. Austin Peay taking on Western Kentucky. And, of course, Nebraska taking on Northwestern on Saturday in Dublin, Ireland. That should be a fun one to kind of really kick off the season. Western Kentucky, Austin Peay officially kicks off the FBS schedule for this year. But that Nebraska Northwestern really kind of kicks it off. So be ready for that. Make sure you're following us everywhere on all of the socials. Like, rate, review, subscribe anywhere you can watch/hear us, so that you get podcasts immediately. You'll get I think on YouTube you actually have to hit the bell sign, subscribe to get an actual notification that, hey, there's new videos. So do that so that you can know as soon as that's live on Facebook. Maybe you listen or started to listen and you thought, I want to see the dumb look on Matt's face when Patrick says something. That would be the place to go so that you can see that. Mattyice and the Chief on Facebook, at MIATC Show on Twitter and Instagram, and of course our regulars you can see on the screen if you're watching live. So another reason to watch live. Do all that. We will be back next week at some point. Again, if you're following the socials, you can actually find out. We'll make we'll do kind of a normal show next week. We'll talk through some of the big games. We'll talk through because it's a large slate that first week, and there's several good football games. We're going to spend a ton of time on Grambling at Arkansas State. Yeah, we'll spend a lot of time on, I don't know, maybe Western Kentucky at Hawaii. That's your first. Is that your first true Hawaii test? I think so, because this week's game starts at 9:30, which is pretty late. But you've got an actual 11 o'clock kickoff on what day is that? The first full weekend. So 10:59 kickoff in Hawaii, Western Kentucky, Hawaii. That's going to be fun. That'll do it for us this week. We will see you guys. I guess we'll see you guys next week at some point in time. Enjoy the SEC. Enjoy this first weekend of actual college football. And we will see you folks around.
Yes, sir.
Sort of an opening up. Someone even go here. Here's the feeling good all the time.